And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guests are Sperry and Soozi. Sperry is the founder and co-director of the Human Connection Institute and has been contributing to applied consciousness sciences for over 30 years. Soozi has a double doctorate in metaphysical sciences and divinity, and she's been on the forefront of the conscious movement for 54 years. They have shared void-based consciousness together, which we are going to learn about today and more. Sperry and Soozi, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Thank you so much. Wonderful to be here with you and your audience.
Well, yes. We have talked about the black void many times on the podcast because quite a few near-death experiencers wind up there. So first, I think it would be best to get your definition of what the void is.
Soozi and I have both had near-death experiences. Soozi had one that lasted for 12 hours, where she came back to life. They thought she was dead, and then she popped up, and they said, "Oh my God!"
Wow!
Back and was dead again, seemingly. And the coroner said, "Oh well, I guess she's dead now." And a couple hours later, she popped up again and said, "What do you mean? Hi, everybody."
Oh, that's amazing.
Amazing. And when she was there, she went into Christ consciousness, felt like she was the entire universe, and was intimately in bliss and one with all. And my near-death experience is very similar. It's being everything and nothing, having no boundary, no beginning or end, being formless, no self, no me, just pure awakeness, this presence of pure consciousness without an object, and the void being somehow there intimately undergirding this quality of awakeness that had no beginning or end.
Now, is it completely devoid of light? Like it's a black void and you see nothing but blackness?
I'll go. When my experience when I was 28 lasted for about 3 months, and I didn't know what to do with it. I had teachers, but nobody was talking about the void, so I just kind of put it on the shelf. But it was like my eyeballs were a dividing line, and everything here was the third dimension, and everything in back was the void, and it was black, black, black. But it was like you could float in it. You felt the potential of what was there. I was like, I didn't know what to do with it, but I just loved to hang out there. And if I closed my eyes, it was just the void, but I was conscious that the third dimension was still there. Then when I met Sperry, I was able to understand how to become the void in the third dimension at the same time. And I'm not great at it yet, but it's real good so that in my meditations, they've shifted so much in the last 7 months since I've known Sperry, in that I sink into the void, and I become effortless, aware. It's a thoughtless awareness. You're you're conscious that everybody's in there, but a lot of people aren't conscious that it's a very potent area, and it looks just like your background, Jeff.
You said everybody's there. Do you mean everybody's there collectively that becomes one consciousness, or are there still individual consciousnesses there?
It's all one consciousness, and it's not just planet. It's rocks and trees and cosmos. It's how I kind of think of it. Of course, now they're debating about the Big Bang, but it was like you go to the place before the Big Bang when everything was nothingness. I mean, for me to become nothing, going nowhere forever, is, now that sounds a lot of people would say, "Oh, I don't want to do that," and especially if you've been abused. And I did have a lot of as a child. So, and your abusers try to make you feel less and less and less, but they're taking your energy. The void it's pure potential. I race if I've got a lot of stress. I race there for safety. It's a comfort.
While either one of you were there, would you say that it felt velvety?
Yes, I never thought of that.
What about you, Sperry?
It does feel like we're there now. I mean, for this one, I'm just continuously indivisible. But it's not an objective thing. It's not a. There's no boundary, no beginning or end, no me, no this, no that, and that seems to be. It's like the screen of our Zoom here. It's like a mirror which receives and reflects us, and the mirror in our bathroom receives and reflects us, but it has no image of its own. It is thoughtless and choiceless and imageless.
Yeah.
The void that I experience right now with the three of us in our audience and the whole of nature here is it's just the most intimate, the most gentle and all-loving, unconditionally loving quality that seems to be permeating everything.
Would you say that the void is a place that from there you can go anywhere to other worlds and other realms? It's like a starting point?
Actually, in the physics of it, because I needed to understand how could I be nobody going nowhere forever and everybody and anybody and still be somebody. And I found that as I said, the two ET races, actually a third one now, that all agree that everything is actually orchestrated by a single point, which is dimensionless, which is still a void, but it is omnipresent at every coordinate location. So if you can imagine every coordinate location in our universe and in the multiverse, if you want, all coordinate locations share a single polar point, which Dr. Buechler and I, in our physics, we just call the fourth dimension of space. And several physicists did want to make the fourth dimension a dimension of space because things happening in three dimensions have to be happening somewhere. And if you can imagine the totality of all that is it's a quality of being indivisible and instantaneous and always whole and holy. It's like the all-loving divine nature of our spirit is really the void, in a sense, that unites all that is as an undivided unity. And that feeling of it all being undivided as a unity is the all-loving unity of the void, really taking form out of formlessness, making form remain united and yet reunited with itself, regenerated and represented to itself as incomparably unique every single instant, continuously, which is creation and the life force, if you will. So it's all one. Void, using the word void seems kind of like derailing the imagination, maybe a little.
So would you say then that the void is a place where all creation begins?
Yes.
That's what I'd say. Yeah.
Continuously begins and rebegins in a way.
And Jeff, the answer when you said, "Is the void? Can you get anywhere? Go any place from the void?" In my death experience, I was shooting through the cosmos, and it was the void, but there were planets and things, and I was aware that it was a place of travel. You could get to anywhere from where I was. I didn't know what that meant at the time because it was a long time ago, but yeah, I think you can get anywhere from the void. I think, and I just spent some time with a gentleman in Sedona, and he can draw in spaceships, and he said he must be in the void before he can pull them in. So it's a kind of an access spot.
Sperry, you mentioned that the void is basically everywhere. And if that is true, would you say then it's everywhere but in a different frequency, like a different radio station?
Well, if we're talking about the absolute void, there is no frequency. It is a thing. It has no boundary, no beginning or end. It cannot be divided because there's no thing to divide. So it's the absence of all vibration and wavelength and in energy and matter, mind and body, space and time. It's the absolute absence that gives rise to our presence because it's the only constant. It's unchanging. In physics, you have constants.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them actually, we found, have been shown that they actually vary, but the void does not vary. It's like a mirror in a way. If it was a cosmic mirror that is omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, it just is receiving and reflecting and representing what we see in the mirror, even of this screen on here on Zoom. Every moment we're having a unique experience that we're sharing with each other and with our audience.
In the beginning, I said that you guys share the void together. Does that mean that you both say, okay, at 6 o'clock, start meditating and get into the void and I'll meet you there? Or what is going on? I know it sounds funny, but I mean, it sounds like to me that you guys are consciously meeting there at some point.
Well, we meet on Zoom almost every day for the last 7 months. And at first, I was coming with a lot of stories. And then I understood that my stories were preventing me from being void-based. I mean, this has been a kind of a process I've been going through. And even some of the personalities that I created as a child to handle the until I could be an adult, and I've done a lot of shadow work. But yeah, even yeah, everything was that I had created was there to block. So as I dealt and got to my core, the void was, I realized I am the void, you know, we are the void. And when you said the word frequency, I went, no, because there's no frequency there. It's forever, forever and ever and ever. But the longer you hang out completely void based and your consciousness there, then the frequencies start shifting in the third dimension. You start getting higher, higher frequencies in your life with people and stuff and things.
Like
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. It does.
When he talks about going into thoughtless awareness, which is another way of talking about the void, that allows the whole body, heart, and mind to recalibrate and orchestrate and organize around that which is indivisible, which cannot be divided by thought or sensation or thinking. Or so the void is very essential, it seems, to be the equal and opposite, the complementary opposite of form. Formlessness is like a pivotal point, like at the center of a bicycle wheel or car wheel, there is an axis which needs to be dimensionless for the mass and energy of the wheel to spin without any resistance or heat. Because if there was something there, there would be heat and resistance, friction, and the wheel wouldn't spin. It would have been possible to invent the wheel.
Okay.
So what is dimensionless seems to have been overlooked as something that seems a little scary, maybe. But Soozi and I wanted to come on your show here, Jeff, in order to embody it with you and your audience, so we can see, even though it's a word, the void sounds terrible, being nobody, going nowhere. It's just the one, it's pure spirit is really what it is. I asked my mom once when I was 6 years old, I said, Mom, is there a word for everything? And she said, well, that's spirit, Sperry. Everything is pure spirit. I thought, well, that's great. I've got a word for everything.
And Jeff, when we'd meet on the Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
This was so exciting for me because you know, I was working at it and learning, working to learn how to be effortless. It's kind of contrary, but then it's kind of right. You can both feel it. You know, you sink into it. You become thoughtless, and you know you stare into each other's eyes in the the camera on the Zoom, and um, and you can feel it. All of a sudden, you can sense. Oh, I can feel him. I can feel. I sense that we're both. I don't know how to explain it, but you you're he's doing it. I'm doing it. I mean, he's always there most of the. I mean, and I'm like trying to get there all the time. But as soon as I sink into it, you can feel it, and I can sense everything that Sperry's sensing, and we can feel each other and we also meet with several groups where the whole group does this, and Sperry's been doing this for 45 years with hundreds of thousands of people in groups. But there's something about I don't know, being really able to stick with it, that your life shifts in such an awesome way.
Are you guys just facing and looking at each other, or actually do you close your eyes and do some type of meditation?
The only time I close my eyes is when Sperry starts talking physics, and then if I close my eyes, I can grok it better. But looking into each other's eyes, there's a mirror, and because Sperry is way more void-based because he's been doing it longer, a lot of times I can get it just from tuning into him, because he's there. Sink into it right away,
It's sort of like, in your audience, it's like it's the word empathy means feeling what it's like to be the other person. We have mirror neurons, millions of them, which allow us and animals to be able to sense what others are sensing. And on equipment, you can actually see that we are actually mirroring each other neurologically. And so Soozi and I go into a place where, like even right now, this one here feels her inside of my heart and body. I mean, she's not she's over there too, and I feel her over there, but I also feel us as one, body, heart, and mind, soul, and spirit. Feels us that way too. And the more we feel that way together, the more there's this sense of unconditioned communion of pure, true love. And it's so beautiful.
At any point, do you have an out-of-body experience while doing this?
I do all the time, because that's why I said I would retreat in the beginning. I would retreat to the void for safety, for comfort. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Earlier you mentioned races of ETs that have kind of, I guess, agreed that there's a void or some type of place like the void. What ETs are you speaking of?
Well, I may not be able to remember the man who founded this remote viewing institute. It's the foremost public remote viewing institute, and he has some of the top remote viewers working with him. Maybe
is it Russell Taggart?
Guys, I know there's Dr. Courtney Brown. He has some. Courtney Brown out of Atlanta. There's Major Ed Dames that used to be at the military. There's Joe McMoneagle, I think, that used to be at that work with somebody. And then maybe I'm not sure what he does, but you mentioned Russell, maybe Russell Targ.
That's right. Yeah. The man who taught them all was also a friend of mine. I'm trying to remember his name. He died a while back, but he taught all the remote viewers and was extraordinary himself. Ingo Swann.
Yeah, I thought he was there.
Yeah, and then, well, so yes, because there's different kinds of remote viewing. You can have coordinate remote viewing where you actually show up in the other location. And you can be visible or not visible depending upon your capacity. And in many of their instances, Courtney Brown says that his remote viewers, they experience that the ETs know that they're there. They look right into your eyes. even though you're there without a body, in a sense, they sense your consciousness there. Now, so Courtney was saying that a couple of different ET races, that they say that the whole universe is coordinated by a single point. Now, I'd never heard that ever said before when I started working with Dr. Buechler, but I had come to that from feeling that the one thing that we need to understand as human beings is what consciousness is, because to not understand who and what we are at the level of awareness or shared sensitivity as a single consciousness, it seems to be the reason why we're so collectively unconscious as a species. So I set out to popularize access to a commonly sensed, totally heartfelt conscious intelligence for all 8 billion people through multimedia projects using film and science and social media to make it accessible to everybody who would be on Facebook or on Twitter, where they could come into this application and they could enter into unity consciousness through making eye contact with each other. Because when we, as you asked, Jeff, like right now, when I'm looking into the webcam lens, you can look into my eyes because I'm looking into where you're looking at me. And when we're aware of awareness, as in meditation, when we become aware of awareness, and awareness structures itself because it's aware of itself. And all the, going back in 18,000 years, Hinduism, Buddhism, Dzogchen, it's all about awareness becoming aware of itself. And so I found, having done this with thousands of people internationally in multicultural groups around the world, as Soozi said, over 40 years, when we become aware of what we're noticing and feeling and sensing and being together, smelling, tasting, touching, we enter into this unity where we feel like we're part of the inanimate environment. We're part of each other. We're inseparable from each other. And it's absolutely heavenly.
Yeah.
It's impossible once we become aware together. So when we become aware of awareness, it's another way of saying that we're aware of the void, in a sense, because awareness is that which unites everything, all that we're sensing and feeling and thinking, and you are, I am, and all is, all nature is utilizing this present moment, eternal now, which cannot be divided, to reunite everything and recreate and represent everything in some fresh new way.
Do you believe that we come from the void and we go back there when we die? Eventually, if not immediately?
Oh, our very existence to this moment and back then and in the future, we owe our very existence to being the void together. It's not just me separately or my unique version of it. There is that level where I am unique because the void is unique. The void is incomparably unique. And so it causes space-time, energy, and matter, mind and body to be unique every moment, because space-time, energy, matter, mind, and body has to be changing and evolving and never the same way twice. So the reason that we are incomparably unique as individuals, in my experience, is because the void makes us so. And we can't not be the void. That seems to be the realization in the East, and whether it's Nisargadatta or the Dalai Lama or Lao Tzu or Sankara or Gautama Buddha, they all speak of the same quality.
Would you say then that part of us is always in the void and a fraction of us is here in this 3D realm?
You're sort of mentioning the quality, there might be a proportionality. I think it's all void, just that some of it looks fresh and new every moment at the level of three-dimensional photons and electrons and sky and palm trees and oceans. And
so are you saying basically everything is the void, but somehow in our local area, we're creating this environment?
well, Nankai Norbu, who written 22 books, was one of the most venerated Tibetan teachers. People created centers for him all over the world so that he might come and visit them. And in his books, he repeatedly says that we are the void, whether we know it or not. And
Right.
what has been said throughout thousands of years through experiential, contemplative, meditative, direct experience, going back even, as I understand it, 18,000 years in the Bon tradition, BON, that it said you just sit down, make no effort, accept and allow everything to be exactly as it is, and that will allow your whole body, heart, and mind to come into unity of consciousness. You experience your everything and nothing, and you wake up and experience enlightened joy and bliss and, and heavenly unity.
Let's go here. The three great mysteries are: what is consciousness? Do we really have free will? And what is God? So, how can we explain those? Or actually, how can you guys explain those?
Want to give a go on that one, Susie?
The way I see it, which the way I'm experiencing it, is um, everything's the void. We are the void, but that's why the word void conscious. How many of us are conscious that we're the void? And like my meditations have shifted drastically. I mean, just think about this. I ground. I've got grounding sheets. I healed my a long injury with grounding, but when you're grounded in when you're grounded to Gaia, the planet, this is it. But when you're grounded in the void, it is the most secure. It's like the how do you say it, Sperry? The groundless ground of our being. I mean, it is. And I've been thinking about what you said about the lady that said that getting off the wheel of reincarnation. That makes sense to me because you have it when you're in the void, you have that choice. You can hang out there or you could go back into another lifetime. But uh, yeah, it's so potent. It's just yeah, potent, powerful. And let me say this. Deepak, I read a lot of Deepak's books, almost all of them, and he would talk about uh, going from the void into the third dimension. And he would say how about the more you hang out in the void, the more the third dimension gets better. And but he never, I didn't get how to do it. I didn't get how to, but when you really become aware that you are the void with everything else, there's this there's this calm and yet this power. I play music in 17 Zooms so I go to a lot of groups, but the ones that meet with Sperry and this void-based consciousness, I want to be there so bad. If I miss it, I long for them because there's something so unique about being nothing with a whole lot of people. I mean, I had two master teachers. One of them said, you become zero with the rim rubbed out. And that's what it is. You rub out the rim and then what is there? There's the void.
Maybe another way to say it is that we are no one thing in particular.
Oh, that's better.
So we're everything, but we're no one thing in particular. And so it's both and. It's a complementarity. In Hinduism, it's one of the few traditional religions where the teacher or the sadhu and the student merge as one, and that's how the student learns how to be awake and enlightened and free of Maya. So this is a very ancient experiential way of learning and unlearning and relearning every moment, moment by moment. It's very beautiful that it's constantly we're constantly being refreshed. And the more awake and aware I find when we are awake and aware together, uh, the more our hearts and bodies and minds and souls and spirit all are just flowering like flowers that emerge out of the greenery. And, it's really a flowering of human consciousness. Eckhart Tolle talks about the flowering of human consciousness, and he talks about how we're not the doer. We're actually, it's being done through us, because we're not who we think we are. We're not. He would say, "I'm not special. If I thought I was special, it would ruin everything." That people want to tell me that I'm very special, but actually I'm not special at all. I'm just part of everything and everyone, and everything is happening through me as this one timeless, ever-present unity of this nameless. You call it the power of now.
Is there a God? And if so, how does God fit in with the void?
Oh, okay. Imagine that here there is this quality that is omnipresent and omnipotent and omniscient because it is within everything. There's more of it than there is space and time, energy, and matter. One quality, which is not a thing, and not anything in particular. It's the absence that gives rise to our presence. That we are all made by this. So if there is, I would say that if there was a highly evolved spiritual being, it could have created this universe, he or she, or whatever, just by going like poof, like that, because you can create this entire universe in its wholly and complete unfolding very effortlessly if you have the consciousness to do so. So then let's say that, well, maybe that's what happened, but then the great thing is that this void, which makes the whole universe, the 2 trillion galaxies that we've measured with our instrumentation, each galaxy is in some cases 100 or 200 billion suns and trillions and trillions of planets that could bear Earth, bear life. And all of that is united at a single polar point in the 4th dimension of space, which is a magnetic vector called the magnetic A vector. The whole of 3D is embedded in that magnetic A vector, which is spaceless and timeless. So I'll get to the end of this question, answering this question. So when we look at light, it seems that light is going from here to there, or it's arriving here so we can see ourselves and each other. But in the frame of reference of the speed of light, this has confused physicists for over 100 years, that in the mathematics, there is no separation between the point of emission of a photon of light from an electron, and that photon can travel a universal distance to the end of the universe billions of years later and be absorbed by another electron. That appears to have taken time and space for it to happen. But in the frame of reference of the speed of light, there is no separation in time or space between the point of emission and the point of absorption. They are the same point. And that point is that 4D point, or a 0D point, if you like. And that is omnipresent continuously throughout all these 2 trillion galaxies and probably many trillions more that we haven't detected yet. But that omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient coordination and orchestration of all of space-time, energy, matter, mind, and body might as well be God. You see, because it is pure consciousness, pure intelligence, as Eckhart Tolle said, awareness is pure intelligence. So that is, and we are that. And so we are being created by a creator And we are karmically beholden to, through how we pay attention, what we pay attention to, and how well we pay attention, to become, in order to be free of all suffering and be enlightened, we have to become like that which we are, which is God consciousness. We have to recognize that we all are God. There's nothing but God in that sense.
You use the words, we are karmically beholden. Why is that?
Because we are karmically beholden to recognize and realize as a human being here on a planet, or in the fourth dimension, fifth dimension, sixth dimension, eighth, ninth, whatever. I personally came here from something like the eighth or ninth dimension. I heard the question, hey, there's this place called Earth. Could you come and help out? We need to raise the collective consciousness vibration. And where I came from, we were all in telesomatic or somatic telepathy. There were no internal organs. There was no me and you and this and that. But we were incredibly unique every moment. Completely and totally heavenly. There was no possibility of any suffering. We could never get gotten bored for a microsecond. It was so wonderful. And I just felt, without thinking about it, I visioned that I could go wherever this place was, to this planet Earth, just show people, just notice what you're noticing together. Notice the quality of your feeling and sensing together. And you'll all wake up and you'll be in heavenly together. And it'll be really simple and easy, and maybe in Earth time that it might take about a week or two, and everybody would be happy, and I could go back to where I came from.
All three of us are sitting here together as individual consciousness or individual conscious beings. We all are here together, but we all have different thoughts running inside of our heads. Now, when we discard the body and go back to the void, do we lose that individual thinking like we are now and become nothing? Or are we in this space and we still have our individual conscious thoughts?
I could say something about that there's a man I met with for about 3 hours each time on Oahu when I was living there a few months ago. He was introduced to me by my theoretical physics brilliant man. And he's written 22 books. He researched the afterlife as an investigative reporter and author. And what he found from his in-depth investigations of people who were here, and then when they got to the afterlife would communicate back, like William James, who was considered one of the great lights of enlightened people 100 years ago. William James came and got a hold of Jane Roberts, who wrote Seth Speaks, and got her to essentially write down his channeled book through her, which I've read. And it seems, and he speaks very eloquently because he was extremely articulate, beautiful man, and very sensitively to the pathos of human life. And he describes the other realm, to answer your question, Jeff, that it's just like we're hundreds or thousands of times more lit up and turned on. What we imagine ourselves to be is what we experience. So we're more malleable. We can, if we want to change our clothes, we just imagine a different clothes. But we really know that we're just an epiphenomena of what we pay attention to and how well we pay attention to this or that or the next thing. But the more awake and aware we are to being this immeasurable, indefinable awakeness, that aspect of awareness that has no image of its own, like a mirror, like this mirror of our two-dimensional screen of our Zoom call. There's this aspect of us which just is receiving and reflecting what we appear to be at the level of form. That continues on into the afterlife. And the more we become cognizant and awake to that property of us, we ascend up to multiple levels and of greater and greater empathy and compassion and love for all life everywhere. So we learn to embody everything more and more, and we feel that we want to ascend in that way because it's just more beautiful and ever more beautiful and more amazing and more. We becoming more and more in touch with what we would call true love, this communion of all that is as one.
All right, what I need from you guys is a practical way for my viewers to be able to have void-based consciousness.
Well, this is what I've explored, Jeff, for really all my life. It took me about 20 years of contemplative meditation to realize that, well, hey, it could be very simple. I could just ask people to come together who were interested in experientially exploring a common sense. And we'd get together and sit in a circle in person and take turns pointing our attention by speaking 2 sentences each, looking into the eyes of everyone in turn around us as we were speaking slowly. And by attending to the presence of awake awareness in each of us, in all of us, after about maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 60 minutes, we would gradually, ever so gradually, start to become awake as one and many, as one body, heart, and mind. And I was so happy to realize, oh my goodness, everybody could become awake as one. It would be so marvelous, like it was where I came from in the 8th or 9th dimension, wherever it was. Because it was very hard for me to exist as a human being with everybody feeling divided from themselves and each other, caught up in their mind and identification with thought and ego and self-centric identities and so on. And it was so painful to feel people because I was so empathetic, because I could feel them as if they were me. And it was very sad to feel that people were in so much sorrow and pain and depression and feeling so helpless. So I'm kind of drifting here. What question am I answering, Jeff?
I wanted practical tips or practical ways for people to experience void-based consciousness. Somebody sitting at home watching this video is thinking, I want to have void-based consciousness. How do they do it?
Well, they're welcome to contact us. And I've been doing this largely for free for over 40 years. As I feel it's something that we should be paying forward. I teach it to people, and then they can teach it to other people. I've taught many therapists this. Some people have learned it from my institute's website, and they've never experienced me do it, and they've been successful first time every time. So they're on my website on the far left-hand corner. They can find a link to the guidelines. There's several links to various guidelines for online or in-person guidelines, and you can follow those guidelines. And there are videos that explain it also on my website. On the far right column are more videos, upper right column of 6 columns. And my institute's website is Connection Institute. That's all one word. Connection is singular, connectioninstitute.org. And so you can go there and explore. There's a lot to read. Some of it is very in-depth, rigorous science and physics and biology and neuroscience and such. And some are film projects, how to bring people in who are sitting in audiences in theaters or individually at home watching a YouTube, how they can be brought into unity consciousness by having the people on screen look into the camera lens. Even though it's pre-recorded, they can look into the camera lens and talk to the audience, as I have done in many little short videos. And I look into the camera lens. I said, you feel this sense of us being awake and aware right now in the moment together? Isn't it amazing? Even though I'm recorded and you're here live, noticing with me. And the more we begin to notice the quality of our noticing, how we begin to feel like our bodies are relaxing and opening up into this communion together. And it's so beautiful. And many people write me, they go to my YouTube site, my channel, which is called Knowing, Knowing. And you can watch those short little videos. And
I want to try it.
Many ways of learning to do this.
Okay, I've been meditating forever. I mean, at least 54 years. I did have that 3-month experience, so I think this will still help people. But what I do different than what I used to do is I sync. And in the beginning, I had to use my imagination a little bit because it's dark, it's black, it's void, and I would sink into it. And I would imagine what it was like before the Big Bang. I would, but because I'd had that experience, it was probably easier for me than if you'd never had an experience. But you sink into it, you use your imagination, and there's an expansion that happens as you sink. And don't be afraid of losing yourself, and don't be afraid of, in other words, just really try to get into the fact that we are the void. We have always been the void. In the beginning, Sperry, I would say, oh, I hung out in the void because it was a place for me. But then I realized the more I did it, it was like, oh, it's always here. I am the void. We are the void, everything. And, that question about God, I can't imagine. I mean, there were years when I couldn't even say the word God because of so much abuse in that name. But I couldn't imagine anything being God but the potent potential. And let me say this, the groups that we do meet in, there's an awareness, knowledge, a knowing that we are touching lives, expanding way beyond the, 8 to 30 or however many people are there, that you can feel this reaching out because everybody is the void. They're just not conscious of it. And we feel the amazing synergism of everybody experiencing it at the same time. So you can feel it reaching out and touching inhabitants on the planet. And maybe beyond because of the cosmos that we're dealing with.
Could you say that we are the void, we come from the void, and we go to the void?
I would just say we are the void. And why would you come and go if you're always the void? I mean, we are the void, right? But maybe, I don't know, Sperry, you go.
Well, the various ways, quite a large variety of ways of explaining this. One way that can help some people more than others, perhaps, is that if you look at everything that we are as a sentence, where there's nouns and predicates, there's somebody who wants something or wants to get rid of something, or someone who imagines that there's something or that they have something and that they want it or they don't want it or whatever. So these nouns are objectifications of what we are. And then there is the verb that connects the subject and the object in the sentence of life. And the verb is like seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, hearing, feeling, being, knowing, unknowing, breathing, hearing. All these ing words are really what we are. They are, when I point to even thinking right now, no thoughts come up when I point to thinking itself, because thinking is an activity. It's not identified with any given thought, but it is what makes thought possible, because it unites possible ways of conceptualizing or imagining or feeling or sensing or hearing or smelling or tasting, or it, it the activity of consciousness unites potentials, as Soozi uses that word. And in quantum theory, when we observe the quantum system, which is ordinarily a probabilistic, it's in many different states simultaneously, but when we observe it, there's the collapse of the wave function, and it now obeys the classical laws, which are deterministic. So we're observing ourselves to be what we appear to be, and we're actually creating a deterministic sequential experience of being Sperry, Soozi, and Jeff on a Zoom call. And so it's very funny when we actually look at what the illusion of the whole thing, and yet it's so real, and it might as well be as real as anything else, and it's wonderful. Though the verb has no objective reality in that sense. It's an activity, but it's not an object. And we have overlooked the fact, we take it for granted that we are seeing and feeling and smelling and touching and hearing and tasting and being and sharing. But we don't really pay attention to it directly, like I'm asking us to do right now. So when we look into the webcam lens, to answer your previous question, how do we get there? And we notice that this activity, it is not an objectification. It is causing the nouns and the objects of consciousness to be fresh and new every moment. So essentially, we trade what we normally think of as verbs, as the activities, for the nouns, and now the nouns and the objectifications can be fresh and new every moment, and the verbs can be constant and continuous and ever, causing us to be fresh and new every moment by recreating us and representing to us ourselves to ourselves, like a mirror receives and reflects us and presents us to ourselves every instant, moment by moment. And so in this way, by teaching the verbal analytic new brain, this childlike new brain that emerged out of the sensory, reptilian sensory motor intelligence from hundreds of millions of years, that gave rise to the emotional mammalian limbic system that gave rise to this new brain, which is largely represented in the right brain through the body and the heart are largely represented in the nonverbal right brain, connected through the corpus callosum to the left brain. The left brain's trying to say, "Mommy, daddy," like the daddy is the body and the mommy is the heart. "Mommy, daddy, what's this? What's that?" You know how children do that? They're like trying to tug on their parents' shirt while they're on the phone talking to their friend, like, "Mommy, daddy, what's this? Look at my drawing." So this new brain is like constantly trying to make a conceptual version of what we're feeling and sensing non-verbally. And what has happened in modern society is we've given ourselves over to identify with the left brain so totally that we're lost in the forest among the trees. We're making these images and these concepts of who we imagine ourselves to be, and we get lost in that objectification. And we need to get back to the activity of being everything and nothing and someone and somebody and anybody. in some fresh new way every single moment. So it's you get there, Jeff, by and your audience by actually exploring this and understanding it and feeling it and sensing it, and gradually through doing that over and over again, it becomes our new way of being, which is so liberating and free of suffering, because everything is all integrated together as a whole and holy, sacred beauty.
If we start practicing this void-based consciousness on a daily basis, what kind of benefits or changes in our life should we expect to see?
Me. Because I'm doing this firsthand for the last 7 months, there's a peace that I've never had. There's an ability to, and there's a lot of chaos in my life right now, and there's an ability to, instead of panic and pray and all the spiritual things to do, there's allowing everything to be exactly like it is, really becoming effortless, which I was trained by several teachers that if it's going to happen, you got to make it happen. So that's a complete switch. Become completely effortless. And that's another way to get into the void, allowing everything to be just like it is, becoming effortless. And when you get like that, you see the void start moving through you. I mean, more is accomplished in my life because I'm learning to be effortless instead of me going out and doing all of it, because I have been a kind of a doer. And so, yeah, is that good?
Yeah, even though you're being effortless, do you still have desires and wants, and are they still being met now, but you're not having to go make it happen? It's happening for you through the void.
Well, that happens in the third dimension, and I don't spend time when I'm completely void-based and conscious that I'm void-based. I don't spend time thinking about that, but I know that, but there's a kind of a knowing that when I get up and do more third dimension stuff, there are more answers. It's being way more taken care of than it used to be in my life. There's more peace. There's more, and to be able to be calm. Yeah, it's way deeper than it's ever been in my life. And I really have done a lot of stuff spiritually, but this really seems to me to have grounded me in, and yeah, I really like what it's doing.
It's not either or, Jeff. I'd say it's both and. Krishnamurti recommended make no effort, explore effortless awareness. And that's how I got into these void-based consciousness states, really when I really started getting grounded in the groundless ground of my being when I was like 32. And we can make an effort and yet be effortless simultaneously. It seems contradictory, but that's why I think that people find it hard, because they think, well, either I'm going to be effortless or I'm going to make an effort. Which is it going to be? No, you learn to be able to do both simultaneously. And the more effortless I am, the more effort I can exert. And the more intention I can bring to bear in a very focused way. And that intention, when it is void-based and comes from this effortless place, which is serving the greatest good of all life everywhere, the more it tends to manifest spontaneously. There was actual research with some of the people at Stanford Research Institute International, where they tried to use their psychic abilities to guess the silver futures, and they would buy in and they would make money, and then they would lose the money. They make it up again, and then lose it again. And they came up with the insight that they said, unless we were serving the greater good of everyone, because everyone is in this together, we really can't serve our separate selves greedily just for our own benefit. It actually, these abilities work out much better when we're serving the greater good of all, life everywhere. And then, because we are everything and nothing and everyone, it works a lot better that way.
After watching this podcast, I'm sure there are going to be people that have questions. Are you up for that? And if so, how can they reach you?
Well, that could be a tsunami, or maybe it'll be just the perfect amount of questions, and I would love that very much. And they can write to me, Soozi. You can say if you would like that. You can write to me at Sperry, Sperry. It's a Scottish name. Sperry Milad, Sperry dot or period Andrews, Andrews. Aardvark, Nancy, David, Robert, Everett, White, Sam at gmail.com.
If people do want experience, there's a lot of places they can, come. Sperry will suggest, and trying it with a bunch of folks is about the best thing there is, because you have the experience, and it's really beautiful, really fun.
What I ask usually is kind of off-putting for people, as I said, well, if you would organize a group, because I've organized so many hundreds and hundreds of groups, if you would be so kind as to bring some people together and organize a group and just tell me, let's agree on a date and time, and I'll come in and, demonstrate how this can work and send you stuff so you can learn beforehand and prepare yourselves. So I've done that over and over again, of course. Travel all around the world doing that. So if people would like to, to get a group together, that would make it a lot easier for me, because I'm doing a lot of other work with the films and physics and the sciences to bring about unity consciousness for 8 billion people through film and social media. So I'm pretty busy. But some people write me and they say, oh, you're making films. Well, I need money. I want a job. Could you give me a job at doing something wonderful? And no, I don't have any. I'm really doing what I'm doing on a shoestring practically. I do get money from philanthropists, and people donate from time to time. And so things just go along at their own speed. It seems to me that if this had come together sooner, it might have been more dangerous, because it seems that some people really don't want unity consciousness on this planet. What do you know? And so, but it seems that things are clearing up, and we are, from the physics of it, we're actually making more observations per moment. And as that happens, we're noticing more together, and it's like darkest before the dawn. We're in a very dark period, but we're actually, you can sense how we're all waking up, noticing more, feeling more, sensing more together, and our polarization with each other is being dissolved gradually, ever so gradually, and we're coming out of the dark night of the soul into the light of human enlightenment, essentially, on this planet.
Well,
now, I did mention my 5-year proposal for that anybody could take a look at. If you put that in the description, Jeff, then people can take a look at that. That is a $27 million project. It's my third major project that I've launched over the last 30 years to essentially have people come to films or watch YouTubes where they're brought into unity consciousness and accessing it around the clock through a social media application, 24/7 in multiple languages, in a language of your own choice, or you can enter a group that already is using that language. but you have to begin at the beginning and learn it through video tutorials, and go up for, like in college, 101, 102, 103, 104, to where you find a group that you are at the highest level able to just spontaneously be there from the very beginning, which I have done with groups that have been together for a couple of years on audiovisual applications here, even before Zoom was created, Google Plus and Talk, whatever it was called, something before Google Plus. But it works very well audio only. It works extremely well audio only you have a group call, you can get 25 people, 30 people together, and you just notice and talk about what you're noticing together, and very reliably you go into unity consciousness. Really you're not dependent upon me at all. I'm not a guru. I'm just consciousness like you. And so it's really just about letting consciousness be the teacher. By becoming conscious of consciousness, we all realize our true nature, our true love, our communion with all that is. But just being conscious of consciousness or aware of awareness, it's really very, very, very simple. More simple than just about anything else in existence. That's why it's been so completely overlooked.
Well, before we finish up, can you guys leave us with one last positive message?
My life has completely shifted. And since my death experience 54 years ago, I have been a seeker. I found a lot. I've studied a lot. I've been with a lot of groups. But somehow this has given me a stability that I have always yearned for. To where nothing could shake me. I mean, the groundless ground of my being. I just think that, and as far as the questions, most questions are answered if you get to try it, if you get to work at it. So, write to Sperry, write to me. I'm Soozi Licious, SOOZILICIOUS @hotmail.com. And mostly we can answer questions, but mostly what we would do is guide you into a meeting so that you could experience it, because that's pay dirt when you get to experience it.
The experience is the teacher, and it's not me or Soozi. It's and one of the drawbacks of the experience is that because we are objectified as little girls and little boys, as separate from our mothers and fathers and each other, we've been trained for decades to be adjust to being seen as separate. That's a very fundamental trauma, to come in as a little baby and feel that we're one with all, we're not afraid, that we're ignorant, we don't know anything, we just feel wide-eyed and wondering about everything and what is going on, and we're very lit up and turned on. But once we become objective as separate and labeled as this or that, that takes us out of that space. And that is why humanity is suffering, really, is because even with the best of parents, they didn't know any better to be in unity consciousness. But you go back to indigenous tribes and indigenous philosophy and spirituality. They all, like Hawaiian religion, is all about Pono. We're all this oneness, this love, this beauty, this greatness. And so I would leave you with that this is really very fundamental. We came in, the universe made us to be this way, and we just have to go back and remember. And when we do, we have to run into what we have divorced ourselves from, what we've denied, what we've hidden or repressed or suppressed, into our body musculature, our emotional bodies. And that can be very frightening and very painful, to bring that back into consciousness and integrate it now that we're mature and we feel more safe and secure. but we end up going back to feeling as terrified and as afraid and wanting to escape that pain and that fear as much as we did when we were little babies. So, and small children. So it's very, very challenging to make the unconscious conscious. But if we can recognize that we are largely unconscious, it's said that we're about 97% of this is our unconsciousness, which is great. It's all an automatic, but some of it is something that we don't want to remember. And so if in contemplative meditation, if we take the time to have the trust that we can make our unconscious conscious, we can become completely conscious, and then we enter into enlightened states and can share in this unity with all life everywhere and feel the bliss of Ananda and the joy of being effortless.
Soozi and Sperry, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you, Jeff. It's been so wonderful to be with you. I've been looking forward to it for so many years. And love with you and yours. Love with everybody and all of your beautiful people and all the ones you love.
Thank you. Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.